we have two CISOs present in the room. Keith Orcock, the CISO for Brick Group Services, which is an international insurance company that specialises in commercial insurance, and Adam Gwinnett, the Head of Enterprise Architecture and Cybersecurity at the Metropolitan Police Service. Firstly, could you guys tell us about your role in your company and what you do and what you're responsible for?
CISO, so I head up the strategy for Brick Group Services, cyber insurance risk, everything that the show's about, basically. I joined just at one of the scenarios, and it talked about CISOs who still think they're techie. I definitely put myself in that category as well. It's hard to let go when you've come up through doing everything. So, yeah, that's what I do.
So mine's a bit of a strange role. So I'm affectionately referred to in the IT department as the Met's technology tyrant. So I own the strategic technology investment roadmap for the next 5 years for the MPS. So that's all of our technologies in terms of where we're going to select tech rather than allow our outsourced vendors to choose. From the cybersecurity side, we run what's known as security delivery inside the Met. So that covers cybersecurity risk analysis, but also security architecture and engineering, and the operational security management. So if it happens on my patch, security-wise, and buttons or wires are involved, it's one of my team.
And in your companies, how are security procurement decisions made? So who's involved? Where does the initial idea spark? Who does it go up a ladder? Does it come from the top down? Give us a typical example of how those security procurement decisions are made.
Sure, they're made really well. Actually, for us, it's a combination of things. So generally, when we go to market and compete across kind of the Crown Commercial Services frameworks. For a lot of our services, we generally specify a number of security requirements or kind of security service elements as part of that. That's quite often left to vendor or supplier discretion about how they'll meet them. So what we'll say is we expect to see the following capabilities. You should be able to demonstrate you have something that complies with the appropriate standards and be able to name them and prove how you validated it meets them. So we generally ask for use cases, ideally where they've been deployed in enterprise class or secure environments previously. We have a very specific definition of secure. In areas where it's disruptive, or certainly around our kind of crown jewels protection controls, we do stipulate technologies, partially because for some of our external assurance we have standards that aren't common in the market and external kind of accreditations to meet. So the short answer is if it hasn't been through that, we can't consider it. We generally do tell you if there's only one acceptable answer, we won't hide it, we'll just mention what it is. Most of that stuff comes from me. Generally as part of the strategy, we'll at least name the technology capability categories we're looking at. So we're just in the process of publishing our latest cybersecurity strategy, which names the 4 key areas for investment for this year. We deliberately try and make no secret of that. We've already got people bidding to us as a result of it. But that will basically say, we're looking for the following capabilities, it should be able to be compliant with the following standards, and after that we're up for grabs.
I guess not very different. So we start with what's the problem, and so how do we identify the problem? It's usually from me, but it can come from anywhere. So board, golf course, that sort of thing. My team as well, if things aren't operating, so there's a chance for improvement as well as just not solving, but effectiveness and efficiency, those sorts of things from a problem. Then we go through a little piece about what's the approach to solving the problem. So is it a piece of technology? Is it a process? You know, how do we get through it? What sort of technology best solves it? You know, you end up with a massive Venn diagram if you look too deeply at any solution. Narrow that down to solutions, talk to vendors and talk to suppliers, and I split that out because we're very service delivery requirement. We have quite a small IT and security function, so I like to talk to the vendors and then go to the suppliers about how they deliver that particular technology for us. And then we go RFP, RFI process, literally doing one the first quarter of this year. Try and keep the project managers out of it until the very last minute. and when we actually chosen something. Yeah.
When it comes to events, how do you and your team use events to find new suppliers?
To be honest, very similar to what's been described. So the timing of InfoSec really fits with my budget life cycle. So we have a calendar year budget life cycle. We have to have submitted initial budgets. Actually, this year it's a bit late. Initial plans and budgets are sort of May, June time. So I'm in the process of doing what problems do I want to solve next year, all the time trying to solve this year's problems. So what problems do I want to solve next year? And we're working on how to do it. The InfoSec's actually quite a nice way of finding out ways of that possible solutions can be found, so at that solution level. I noticed I'm in the 7%. I don't plan my visit. I do random. I've been doing it for, I think, 15 years straight now. So I have a strategy, which is go around the edge. And that's where I'm going to find the innovation. I'm not going to find it from the big stands. I'm going to find it at the edge or upstairs now as it is, but in the early days it was certainly around the edge, and it's worked, so I keep doing it. Yeah, so that, and I think it's the follow-up to that is then the talk to the vendors and get some understanding there.
We don't really, or at least not in the way probably the others do. So generally where we're using events to find new suppliers, we speak at them. So when we did a couple of events kind of in the last couple of months, we'll generally talk about, at those, we'll talk about the specific and unique business challenges of law enforcement. So certainly around things like cybersecurity, we tend to talk a lot about at the point when every other SOC and every other CISO has stopped worrying about it is actually when a lot of our work has started. So because we have the largest cybercrime unit in Europe, if you attack one of our systems, you are committing a crime. You're committing a crime when you do it to other people too, but we tend to take it personally. So at that point, we move actually into formal criminal investigation, and so we become very interested in things like evidential standards and ability to build best evidence from it, whereas a lot of SOCs basically, once they've kind of restored the service or protected the data assets, become less interested in what happens afterwards, but our kind of recovery model is quite key. So we tend to talk about that kind of thing, which prompts people to come and talk to us and go, haven't necessarily thought about that before, but we could do that kind of thing. I mean, actually, we tend to use those kind of events for convenience. So because we're very London-centric and our environment is locked down terribly, which makes things like WebEx quite awkward from our environment, we tend to try, if we're talking to smaller vendors and certainly some of the newer entrants to the market, to go to places they will already be, so they don't have to make a special trip out to see us, to be honest. So it's normally that sounds very interesting, or we've done some market scanning and we found you, it looks like you'll be there, so we'll just see you there so you don't have to make a special trip. Because, you know, it's public sector, so the purse strings are relatively tight, so we try and be as low cost and low friction to involve for yourselves with us as possible.
Cool. Just going back to Keith, you mentioned about going around the edges and upstairs to find innovation. Do you take your team along, and if you do you delegate responsibility in terms of what they need to find and bring back, or how do you sort of plan?
Yes is the answer to that. Team go along. We tend to split out days as well, so not quite sure why, but we do. I do, if I've got, well, I don't like everyone out at the same time, that is very true. I take people, again, on the scenarios, the person has just joined, I take around, tell them how to avoid, you know, how to hide your thing from scanning, the usual piece as well. So, and yeah, the team is allocated, you know, by the time of the event, as I said, we've identified the areas we're interested in. The person with that responsibility will come back. We actually come back and go through what answers we found. If we haven't found any, it's a very short meeting, but we go through the answers we found. Obviously, everybody, it's a relatively small team. We've got about 7 people who can come to this thing. There are people who lead the discussion, but everybody looks at everything. It's the nature of the building. We're not, of our architecture, we're not big enough to be that compartmentalised. And I want everybody to, particularly in the security team, to have a view and opinion on everything.
What would you consider good and bad vendor behaviour?
So, so good and bad. A lot of it's been mentioned before. The scanning as I'm walking past the booth on purpose, that sort of thing, and then the follow-ups and things like that. There's very little follow-up that I want proactive. If I'm interested, I will do it. Again, this comes back to my lifestyle cycle more than anything else. The month, 2 months after the event, I'm not interested at that point. I'm doing my internal planning. I've got the solutions that I'm interested in are already planned. So phoning up, and it's mostly the stuff after the event. So I don't know, it's the phoning up, oh, can we come in and have a meeting? Well, no, it's totally pointless. I'll have forgotten about you by the time I make a decision, and if you keep pushing it, I'll intentionally forget about you for it. So it's that behaviour that is the worst aspect of it. The other point, and I did write that down, the product and the person matter. The product, there is always a competitor. No one is unique. There's always a different way of doing it. I do not believe anyone who says, and again it was mentioned, we will solve your problem. No, you won't. You'll solve an aspect of my problem. And we're the only people who do it that way. Refuse to believe that, or at least I can wait a month and someone else will do it that way anyway. So again, it was mentioned on the good behaviour. What don't you do is much more important for me, because I'm trying to plan for the gaps, and understanding the limitations of the solutions is absolutely key to what we do. And then, as I mentioned, the people, I just like nicer people. Being nice to me is a reciprocal thing in terms of from that business relationship.
Don't be nice to me, I'm horrible. I'll do two good things, and then I think probably the bad thing. So certainly last year I had the privilege of wearing the gold star that said I had money to spend, which was quite interesting. Good vendors, as a result, gave me a pitch around boring things like what was the return on investment of putting that in it, what additional business benefits had other clients found from adopting something that you might have deployed purely for a cybersecurity point of view, but also helped you with a different business challenge. So things like, I'm a bit of an identity obsessive. Good identity management doesn't just solve security problems. It can solve an awful lot of business challenges, and actually good people talked about that broader business and strategic value of adopting things. Because we're public sector, a lot of other people had responded to that by said, I don't have money for all the things I'd like to buy. So good people pitched it why it was the most valuable investment alongside other things that I was also investing in. So certainly last year we talked about there were 11 categories of things that we were investing in. I thought if I was lucky I could afford 5. My question was, in your views, what's the best combination of 5? Assuming you're one of them, that and what 4 other things do you think gives the best strategic fit? Some people had actually got a bit of patter around that, which was quite good, and others were like, it's shiny, it's good, it's the top right of the Gartner quadrant, and it's like, yay, everyone is. So I think that kind of helping me with my investment decision process, because I was specifically there as a budget holder and decision maker, was quite interesting. The bad people were like, here's what the words mean. I've been doing it for a decade, I didn't need that. And here's what the console looks like, and here's how you will set up your policies. And I was like, they won't let me set the policies up. That's bad if that happens. Other good stuff, context. I'm an architect, so context is quite important. We're a police service. Most people can work out what we do day to day, business operationally. People that went, and in a law enforcement context or intelligence context, that might also give you the following angles. That was lovely. I don't think it's that hard to work out, but then I've been doing it for a long time. Bad vendor behaviour, complete absence of context. So certainly people that in the follow-up sections tried to sell me solutions to protect me from fraud on my e-commerce channel. I don't sell a lot. Protecting me from losing my click conversion rates on my web advertising. Don't really advertise our services a lot. People know how to find us. So again, people are just like going, who cares who you are? You said you had some money, so you might want to buy some stuff. Yeah, if you haven't even worked out what industry I'm in, I probably don't want to talk to you.
So you'd say a thoughtful, full conversation on site is 1,000,000 times better than 1,000,000 scans or emails or anything you could possibly receive afterwards?
I mean, I've got really good auto-delete rules on my mailbox, so send me as many emails as you like, because they just won't reach me. Actually, I think for me it's a slightly different one because of the nature of the work that we do. Actually, a fairly quick conversation, because there's generally lots of people that want to talk to us and lots of people you might want to see. A short, punchy conversation about why I want to talk to you again in more detail is much better than in a very noisy environment because of the nature of some of the sensitive work we do. There's a lot of stuff that I can't talk about. And if you have interesting and juicy user sites that you can't talk about either. So teeing people up to basically go, we're not going to have the conversation now, but there's a really interesting conversation to have, like in a secure room, is quite good. I mean, I think there was a kind of piece in the user visitor feedback about people knowing what the product does and a few other bits. Knowing, everyone on the stand knowing if you have a sensitive site customer or where it's been used somewhere interesting, not knowing the details, but knowing there's a conversation that can be had if one's needed, is actually quite useful, because we'd ruled out a few vendors and products last year on the basis that they had no sensitive deployments, only for us to find 3 of them through our broader partner community. So just going, we have done this in some sensitive environments, obviously you're not allowed to know where and what it did, but we can set a conversation up, is actually really useful for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Okay, everyone, now it's your chance to ask these very kind gentlemen the burning questions that you wish you could always ask your top customer. Does anyone have a question for them?
It's all right, I get that a lot.
Hi, my name's Jen. I work for Secure Code Warrior. I was just interested more about your backgrounds. I'm quite new to the cybersecurity industry, and we've got all the personas and everything like that. So I'd be interested to know what if your backgrounds actually fit the personas that we've got internally. Both, I think.
IT through and through. How long have I been doing IT now? 30 odd years doing IT. Developer, which for my age is actually a bit unusual. Most people my age who have gone into InfoSec have come from a network security background. Networks, firewalls, security type thing. Mine's slightly different in that respect. I ended up writing software for a CISO so that he could do some identity and access management a long, long time ago before there were IDM solutions available, and got into it that way. Been doing it pure InfoSec now for 20 or so years. Basically, again, I may be slightly atypical insofar as I went in and just did information security. I tend to think of 27001 as my remit. It's broadened as I've got older slightly, but as my remit, and I actually started doing that from the word go. The biggest change in my outlook was the concept of non-technical controls. Again, I come from a programmer background, so a control is something you've written, something you've configured, not something you do. So from my background, that a while back again, but that's it. I've worked predominantly in finance, took a slight detour out of it and didn't like it and ran back. I like the regulation. I like the challenges of it. So actually, I also did Reuters as well, so not all finance, but so bank, like I say, Reuters, insurance, another company, and back to insurance and things like that. So fair amount of changing in that. Yeah.
I'm also atypical, so that's handy. I grew up in an engineering household, so I grew up with IT and was playing with it from the time I was small. My dad said I was programming BASIC before I was talking, which I don't think was true, but he does it to impress his friends. But then bizarrely I went a bit strange, so I'm a qualified IT commercial lawyer, So I used to write IT service agreements, which is why I love arguing with suppliers about what they actually say, which is nice, but got bored of that. So for the last 17 years, I've been in IT, started in IT operations, so actually running systems and working out how terribly lots of things were structured. Moved into architecture on the belief that if you designed and built them better, they might run nicer, so I have a very much a design for operation background, and then moved into security, working out how to do that in a safe and secure manner, because I work in sensitive environments, so I've been specialising in that for the last 5 years. But it means I can have a nice engineering team conversation, but again, yeah, you never quite get off the tools.
Any other questions?
On the rotation.
Hi, I'm Neil. I'm from Panda Security. So I'd just like to know if we were looking to focus on one thing that would get you to visit our stand, what would be a one single thing that would just make you stop by ad hoc and have a conversation with us?
Are you the guys with the Wi-Fi hacking appliance?
Sorry?
Are you the guys with the Wi-Fi hacking appliance?
No, we're an endpoint security vendor.
Okay, sorry, different Panda. So threat landscape for us, kind of deployment in a high sensitive environment. For me, I'm a bit of an automation fascist. I've been told to stop describing it as that, but I haven't found a better word yet. Rapid policy and playbook-based remediation as close to the issue as possible. I don't want alerts. Alerts are noise, alerts are chatter. I want to be able to deploy my concentric control and response playbook based on the context of the threat as close to the threat as possible, because round-trip time across my network kills me from a data sensitivity point of view. So what I'm really keen to see is where people are driving automation, either with it being orchestrated and then being able to be orchestrated as a component from another channel. I'm not a big single pane of glass fan, but anyone says as long as you do everything with our tool, in our tool, it's all fine. Don't like that. I'm a play nicely with others, kind of integration specialist. But the closer to the problem that I can automatically get intelligence and get remediation applied, that's what I'm interested.
That and again, it was mentioned is from a standpoint of view, actually understanding what on earth it is Panda do. You know, the McAfee semantic. Fine, we know what they do. I actually kind of do know because I've got some emails from you guys on EDR. But absolutely plain, clear, simple explanation of what it is and almost what the problem is. That it's so. And now it starts to get a bit awkward to make clear and simple, and why everyone ends up with pages and pages of handouts and things. But the some sort of explanation, easy to spot and understand what it is that you're doing, and it's also a quick way for me not to visit the stand. It's almost counterintuitive, but you don't want me wasting your time when there are other prospects around. So if I've misunderstood, we both lose out on that one. Would be my take. I'm trying to think from the technology point of view as well, and it's kind of the thing that puts me off are the big monolithic we solve everything things, and it may well be that it can be broken down. And I want to, because as I mentioned earlier, the Venn diagram problem statement, the chances are certainly semi-mature or non-startup organisations have a bunch of stuff. We are not going to throw away 30% of our control environment in order to squeeze your product into it. What I will do is replace and extend. So, you know, we're on semantic at the moment. I'm actually going through a process to replace and extend that. But I'm not replacing the entire suite of technologies around it that, for example, you guys do. So being able to be clear about what you do and the steps required to, you know, that it's granular enough and not solving world hunger and information security at the same time.
Hi there. I'm myself a CTO, so I understand exactly what you're saying. What I would like to know is when you come to a stand, what is it that you want to see? Is it a demo? Or obviously, I'm not here to talk about leaflets or handouts because you will have countless of them. So what creates an impression on you from a company that makes you think about this product after you have visited the exhibition? And the second question is that your team, how open are they to discuss the actual problem statement that a product can solve? Because obviously this is something internal and you're not going to talk about it in an exhibition, but to what extent can somebody ask you these questions without making you uncomfortable or to put into that situation?
Yeah, so I am after an understanding of whether the stand I'm visiting solves the project. And I think in terms of it's a conversation, do you understand the problem I'm describing? Because it may be we're using the same words and we mean different things. I mean, security is not bad at it than any other aspect, but certainly suffers from, you can be having a conversation and completely miss the point. So I want to, again, it was mentioned in there, I want people on the stand who understand the product, can describe what it does to me, and I will wait a little bit around for the technical guy, but not that much longer. I'll just wander off while they're saying that they'll get it. So I want to have that conversation, and it is a conversation. It's a couple of minutes. It's not a demo for me. Generally, no matter how much time I get, I'm really not interested in demos until we've chosen down to the last three how it will work. Demos how it will work. I want to know how and why it will work for me, and that's the conversation on the stand. I've forgotten the other part of the question, so I'll hand over.
So in terms of demo, I don't mind a product demo because I'm nosy. So, a bit of shiny stuff's quite nice for. I generally prefer it if the product demo is kind of coupled with a bit of the so what question. So for me, my general challenge questions with the product is who cares and why do they care? I've seen a lot of stuff pitched at kind of last year's and a few other bits, which is, this makes life better for your analysts. And I'm like, good, okay, great. I know it's kind of an analyst productivity improvement tool, that's fantastic. Actually, most of those aren't employed by me, they're employed by my supply chain. So at that point, I care a little bit. People that structure it in terms of the kind of different viewpoints into that. So who cares? Your ops team care because of this. Your board care because of this. Your CISO cares because this is the visibility it gives you. This is how you justify kind of how much risk offset you're getting from it. So that kind of, there's no single dimension to any of these things. So just talking about either how it starts to answer that or how it contributes to answering that somewhere else is really useful. So I tend to quite enjoy that, and I think I've also forgotten about the question. Marvellous.
Yeah, okay. So what we're prepared to discuss, high level, because it's a couple of minutes, this is not technical. Certain technical issues, I don't know, how far would we go on saying, giving a problem around our encryption of in transit type problem. We'll say we've got an issue, we can't encrypt enough of our traffic, our proxy's not delivering the sort of throughput or blah, blah, whatever that would happen to be. Absolutely that level of conversation, no doubt. The protocols and in effect the stuff you'd understand as being sensitive from a security nature, that's where it stops. But the problem, and again, this is partly because I don't have problems that are any different than anybody else in the same place as me. I mean, I know that's obvious, but, Lloyd's has a couple, 100 and something odd companies in it. We all have the same problems. Some of them are massive and have, your Avivas and your Axis, but most of the people in that market, about 100 of them, we all have the same problem. We all talk, we all understand the problem, and it's at that level I would share the problem.
My team work with operational police officers, so upsetting us is quite hard. Generally, actually, though, but given the nature of the organisation we are, the sensitive things we deal with, and so there's a very deep business understanding around the difference between a thing you can discuss because it's sanitised and a thing that's subject to ongoing investigation. So generally, my team are all quite exceptional at going, I can give you a level of detail, and then there's a point where I'm going to stop talking. Generally, if you ask, rather than getting comfortable, we'll just tell you we're not going to answer the question. We generally find that other people get way more upset by that than we do. Refusing to answer a question seems to be quite offensive to some people, but it's kind of the stock in trade. We do that every day. We will talk about current problems. Again, we generally talk about it quite openly. Some of that we can talk about because not everyone has our problems, and the fact that we're struggling with it is new and interesting for people. But yeah, we generally kind of pre-brief and debrief after them. We've never said anything we shouldn't have done yet, and people are occasionally surprised by the amount we're able to disclose. we have a live cyber incident this morning, so I will not be staying for networking, I'm afraid. I can mention that, I'm just not going to tell you where and why.
Good afternoon. Erin from Context. You mentioned a lot of what not to do, but if you had to pick just one thing that was your biggest peeve and has the biggest, largest negative impact on your decision making, what would it be?
I'm not sure I can answer that exact question. Let me just, so as a consultant I talked to ages ago who gave me his kind of summary and managed to summarise why I enjoy conversations and why they're useful to me. And he said kind of his 3 lines were, why you, why me, why now? Which is, do you understand why I need to have this conversation with you and what your role in the conversation is? Do you understand why it's useful for you to talk to me? And do you understand what the conclusion will be and what it is we're trying to solve? And if you don't understand any of those 3 things, I shouldn't talk to you because I will get on your nerves. Actually, it's quite a nice model. So for the things that have gone really well, it's people that have worked out, they've worked out that they want to talk to me generally because I've got money, which I know is good for them, but people wanting to talk to me so I'll go shopping isn't particularly interesting for me. People that have identified challenges either through links to other clients, so again, we've spoken to other organisations, they've had problems, so it seems like you might have this too, or you've published it or you spoke about it at a conference, so it seems like timeliness. What you're bringing to the table with that discussion and why it's a pertinent time, because there's always something happening in our world. So one of the key things for me is people that take the effort to understand why I should prioritise that conversation and have that conversation this week or next week, as opposed to in 3 months' time. So I'm a big one for, I'm happy to have that conversation, but that feels to me like a conversation I'd have in August, not a conversation I'm going to have in the next 2 weeks. And I think it's people that have kind of done a bit of homework and asked around and worked those things out, because then I'm kind of really clear. And I'm more likely to agree to stuff if I actually think it's useful.
Yeah, and I agree. The why now element, for me, if I had to pick out of that, it's the why now. The number of, can we come in and have a conversation? What is it? No, I'm not looking at that this year. Oh, we just want to make you aware of. Well, no, go away, leave me alone. I've got enough problems elsewhere that I need to deal with now. So it's not, and the persistence of that is the one I really hate. Is that, no, we just want so you're better informed or whatever. It's a big, broad subject, and I can't be informed about everything. I have to choose when the now is, I'll stop there. The now is the key element of it. Conversely, I'll say, the missing out element, and I don't know how to balance it, that's your problem. But yeah, I have missed out on a couple of things because I didn't remember, know, or have a supplier. The recent RFP I mentioned as well, I got a couple of suppliers halfway through it. I thought, oh yeah, I had spoken to you. Oh well. Like I say, it's a big enough market that I was looking at. I didn't lose any sleep over it whatsoever. But, could I have managed that a slightly better way? Again, do I care?
When you're thinking about RFP processes and things like that, how do you sort this? Go to the event and the platform
The event is to choose the long list. RFI gets it down. The responses to the RFI get it down to. So I try and start with, and again, it depends on the area and the scope, but I can use this quarter's one as an example. I'll use it. I start with, say, 10 suppliers from this sort of, from that sort of event, from web searches are still great in terms of you put it in, making to pick up the Gartner top quarter, nor half of them because that's rubbish and stuff like that. But I start with 10, that's the RFI. The responses to that get me down to about 7 5 to 7 for the RFP process. That's when I'm starting to talk to people at that point, and getting down to 2/3, which is when I bring people in to talk to the exec, as it were, the board at that point. It's that conversation piece. The RFP is that big 5 to, actually I don't care which one. There's some politics and stuff like that generally, and along those sorts of lines. They've proven they can do it. I can get along with them. I have removed a few people from the process just because I didn't like the guy in the room, or a number of the guys in the room. And it's had the same effect, you know, when I bring a supplier up to meet my boss and along those lines. I've had a couple of conversations, not this one, so I can had a couple of conversations where, you know, that person was condescending. I'm not a security person, but I know what I'm talking about. That person was condescending, and we've got rid of people that it's easy because, you know, we've got them down to a point where the price and the capability is right. We're now talking about business relationship. Can we work with these people? You give us a reason to throw you out, we absolutely will take it.
Actually broadly similar. So yeah, certainly events, long listing at that kind of RFP stage. So from our point of view, we generally get a pretty broad pool anyway, given the size and scale of us. So we generally use that kind of thing to work out if we should be trying to lasso or attract a couple of other people that wouldn't normally put themselves forward for our kind of work. So we tend to get a lot of people where if we're their first criminal justice or their first potential bit of the intelligence community, occasionally get a bit nervous about whether they've got a really strong use case. And occasionally if it's a compelling enough product, we'll kind of do a bit of the roping in. I mean, actually, the other point that we use it for is effectively to challenge our perceived set of requirements. So we're quite open about talking about what we're thinking of doing. I, probably more than the rest of my team, is slightly paranoid about asking kind of a 2-year-old question, going, well, the last time I did this, and cybersecurity is a really bad industry to do. The last time I asked this question, this was fine, so it's okay. So actually, we tend to use it to go, we get your Gartner, your Forrester reports, your kind of that general trend analysis pieces, but to basically go, there's a bit of a paradigm shift kind of coming, all that wave building, and actually you can definitely get a solution that does that for you, but then you'll wish you hadn't in like 18 months. So I think that's where some of that kind of potential fear of missing out stuff kicks in, is that kind of going, you might wish you hadn't asked that, especially given the time that some of that procurement stuff can take to actually filter through, because generally what you find is like 6 months after you ask the question, you go, I really wish I'd asked something else. So that's what I tend to use shows for, is so that people can tell me I'm mad.
Adam, you mentioned about, you know, the quick, punchy conversations that you have on stand to capture attention and to follow up afterwards. And Keith, you mentioned you're one of the only people that doesn't pre-plan. So when you're walking around an event and looking for innovation, that sort of thing, what can exhibitors do to stand out? How can they, you know, position their messaging? What is it exactly you look for when you're scoping out the event floor?
So at any moment, I'm generally pretty oblivious to the world around me. So handily, I'm quite immune to marketing and advertising, which is quite useful because I'm generally thinking about a thing that the previous stand has triggered. I like meeting founders of things, certainly for smaller companies, understanding people that are talking about the vision of why they did it, where they came from, and a few of them. It's actually quite interesting for me, because if I can spot trends in that about some of the stuff that I'm basing strategy on, that's generally more interesting because it talks to me about where things are going to go rather than necessarily where the product is now. So that kind of stuff's quite interesting in terms of, you know, but why is that the thing that you've majored on? So I quite like that in terms of that. I don't know, shiny, whizzy data visualizations are always kind of cool. I mean, I generally stop at stands because I've accidentally tripped over something, to be honest, and stopped over something I meant to.
There's I've got, like I say, I've got an approach which is I come in, I run past the big stands, dodging the scanners. Now I head upstairs or do the edge straight away. And I do the edge and I walk as fast as I possibly can round without bumping into people. So Wednesdays are really good for that because it's Wednesday afternoons. Thursday afternoons, third day afternoons. Sometimes you haven't got any of the people there, so I come kind of flip. So I walk around and I get a sense of the theme of the show from that. I guess I could do it from looking at the pre-literature, but I guess there are generally a number of themes come out. So if I think a few years ago, it was EDR. You know, Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, a few other organisations around the edge where they had tiny little booths. Before that, I think, I can think of, you know, there are various light bulb. WAFs were, what, 10 years ago now? They were on the edge in Perva, right on the edge. I mean, he sold it by being able to solve all web application security problems, so I walked away. But in terms of the theme, getting that theme and understanding what I'm doing, I then take stock, go and have a coffee and sit down and go, right, are there themes that align with my strategy and what I'm looking for next year? And I'm just, as I'm saying this, I'm imagining I could actually plan this much better, but you'd lose the fun and the spontaneity then. So, and then I sit down and then I go back and I have those conversations with the evolvers in this, because generally we've got the basic stuff in. I'm looking for the evolvers. And then I go back to my existing suppliers and say, I'm looking at this, what are you doing in that space? So that's how I use my day, half a day. It depends on the business, like having to run off, happens occasionally, doesn't it? So yeah, that's how I get there. And again, in terms of the having that, it's obvious what it is that is being sold element on the stand without having to talk to someone. Or at least there are elements, oh, I'm interested in that buzzword or whatever. That really helps me in my approach.
Do you have any other questions?
So I guess my question would probably be, out of all of the events that happen in the UK, why would info security be the one that you would be guaranteed to attend? Like, what value do you see in that one over any other? And
So,
how should we be
careful.
helping?
So it's
Sorry.
interesting you put it like that, because it is the one event I will attend and have consistently. And it is the sheer breadth and the ability to say and speak to the people. So it's a number of things. Been doing this long enough. The number of people I know who I will bump into just to say hello again. It's number one, just from it's not so much networking, but particularly the sales guys, the number of times oh, you're with them now. Oh, now with them. But you know, you build up the relationships with them, and again, in terms of the innovation, why have you moved on? Well, I've tried to sell product A to all my contacts. I'm now going to try and sell product B to all my contacts, I think tends to be the real answer. But, so I attend it from that. It's comfortable. It is like wearing a pair of slippers for me. I mean, they're big slippers now, but it is incredibly comfortable. I've been doing it for years. I know my vendors will be there, my big vendors will be, and I will drop in. I'll try and avoid them, but I will drop in just to make sure. Again, as I mentioned, the semantics and the McAfee there, my customer manager account manager will be there, have a few words with him, make sure there's nothing I need to know about, and then move on. And then, as I say, it is where I pick up generally the new stuff. Those two-man booths are the most useful aspect. If the whole place could be filled with startups, I'd go to that.
Yeah, a couple of reasons. So the breadth is certainly it, so I'm more likely to find things there than in other places. Other big events that I tend to be at tend to mix themes. So the last one I went to that was obviously cybersecurity focused, they also had an entire section around like DevOps and what are you doing to rebuild your data center? I was like, nothing, and I don't care. So it's nice that it's all thematic, which means I can be in one head, because context switching's painful after a while. Handily for me, it's also a really short walk, so I'm based at Earls Court, so you know, it only takes 10 minutes to get here. So convenience massively for me. And yeah, I've been coming since I think 2005, so I know the event and it knows me, and I've got a good scowl, so most vendors have learned to dive out of the way if I'm not in the mode.